Hey there friends, how's it going? My name is Frank, and today we're looking at 3 stories from r/Prorevenge, so let's just get right into it. I live in an apartment building which has end-to-end parking for 2 spaces per apartment, and access to the parking levels 1 through 5 are done via a locked automatic roller door which people can only get through if they have a remote for it, or sneak through behind someone else. I only have a single car, and sometimes I let my friends park in the space in front of my car if they give me notice, so I generally park at the back of the double space. Plus, it's easier for my neighbors who have 2 cars. Earlier this year, a random car began parking in front of mine on Friday afternoons, meaning I couldn't go out with my car on Friday nights. Annoying, but not the biggest issue when you live super close to the city. This continued nearly every week for about 5 weeks when I didn't park my car at the front of the bay, which I began doing. But times I planned to leave the space free for friends coming over or whatever, the car appeared again. I made repeated attempts to stop this behavior by leaving notes, which escalated into leaving printouts of a photo of the car with the license plate clearly visible and an explanation that if it happened again, I'd press charges and/or have the vehicle towed. Well, it happened again, and this time it was still there Saturday afternoon when I had been planning on going away with a group of my mates. My guess is someone went out on Friday, got drunk, and decided to pick up the car later, not concerning themselves with the inconvenience it caused anyone else. It clearly hadn't moved, as my aggressive note telling them to piss off was still there sitting limply under their wiper blades. I figured enough was enough. It was time to have the vehicle towed. So I called building management and eventually calling a towing company, who refused to help because the space was on the 3rd floor, and they can't get any trucks up to that level because of the height and space restrictions. Ordinarily, most people would be pretty much screwed at this point, and I'll admit that I briefly considered sitting on the hood of the car until the jerkwad came to pick it up, while sending my mates on their way without me, but they would have had to work out a new arrangement for transport as one car wouldn't have cut it. Fortunately for me, however, my parents live only 30 minutes away, and have a garage where I work on one of my cars that's getting at the tail end of a minor restoration. One of the things I use pretty often is a set of vehicle positioning jacks to jam my project car right up against the wall of the garage to minimize the space it takes up. For anyone that doesn't know, vehicle positioning jacks are basically devices that slot under each wheel, then lift the car up on hydraulics so you can freewheel it in any direction. Whilst I hadn't originally gone to retrieve them, when I had to take my project car off them, a bright idea came to my head. None of my mates minded spending an extra hour to screw someone over that had interfered with us, so we grabbed the jacks and went back, propped the car up, and wheeled it out. 6 guys can easily move around a small hatchback, so we pushed across the level slowly and carefully to an area where there isn't parking but is a load-supporting pillar with a space enough for a car behind it, and a little section of the garage where it isn't lit and is completely out of the way. Typically there's a guy on my level that parks a motorbike there, but he isn't meant to, and I doubt he minded. We dumped it between the pillar and the wall, with the nose pointing towards the wall. I took back my angry note, the jacks, and we left to enjoy our weekend. When we came back Monday afternoon after the long weekend, the car was still there, which was no real surprise considering there was only about a foot of space for movement between the pillar and the car, and another foot or so between the car and the wall. From the fact the front wheels had changed, we're guessing they did try to get it out, unsuccessfully. It eventually went later in the week, though I'm not exactly sure how they managed it. I never saw that car again. Oh my god, this is just so perfect. I can't help but cringe thinking about someone blocking in OP's car, especially after repeated notes left on their vehicle. This is what revenge is all about, guys. I work the night shift as a receptionist at a hotel in Norway, and most nights are spent watching Netflix or playing games. Last summer was really slow, and I also worked a lot extra, so I ran out of stuff to watch and games to play. One night I got an email from Scooter. He wanted to book a room for almost 20 days. I just had to send him the price and confirmation that we had rooms available, and he would then send me his credit card info for me to pre-charge. Normally we just delete these kinds of emails, but I was bored out of my mind, so I responded with an offer for around $2,000 for the entire stay. Also made sure to inform him that he could cancel for free up until the day of arrival. This is probably the most common fraud attempt in the hotel travel industry. Unlike most businesses, we're able to charge debit and credit cards with only the card number and expiration date. No need for a PIN code, CVC, or other authorization methods. Our software also allows us to deposit money directly to local and international bank accounts by using the card number. Because of this, crapheads like Scooter will try to prepay with stolen skim cards, but then cancel the booking and ask us to refund the amount to a different card. A couple of hours after sending him the offer, he responded with a Visa number and told me to charge him as soon as possible. I checked the card with our validation software, and to my big surprise, it did not belong to Scooter. If validation succeeds, it will return with the card owner's name 90% of the time. I sent them a new email stating that the card was declined because of insufficient funds. He quickly replied and gave me a new card to try. Guess what? This one didn't belong to Scooter either. Wasn't even the same person as the first card. By checking the BIN codes, 6 first digits, I found which banks had issued the cards, not even issued in the same country. My plan was just to call the banks and inform them of the attempted scam, but there were still several hours before I could go home, so I decided to mess with Scooter a bit more. Sent them a reply that the second card went through, and also the reference number for his stay at our hotel. As expected, a couple hours later, Scooter sent an email canceling the order and asked if we could refund the money to a different card, as he had lost his wallet and deactivated the card he paid with. This card was issued from a Polish bank. Not sure why, but Polish bank accounts are often used by people who want to launder money from bitcoins and drugs. You can buy a legit card for around $500 that's registered to some guy or girl in Poland from the dark net. At this point, Scooter was probably pretty happy about the $2,000 he soon would receive. I replied that it was no problem for me to transfer the money to a different card as long as it was valid. How fun would it be to also cancel his own card so that he had to spend $500 for a new one? Not fun enough. With the last email, I wrote that he could send me the card number, but that our email server would go down for maintenance in a few minutes, so my boss would do it on Monday. It was now Saturday morning, so enough time for the charged bank to call us and reverse the transfer. If he needed the money right away, I told him to call the hotel before I ended my shift at 7 o'clock. He called almost immediately, and I wrote down the card number and his phone number. Told him I transferred the money and that it would be in his account by 12 o'clock. My shift ended and I went home with all the info Scooter had provided. Wanted to see if I could find out who he was. And of course, this idiot had an open Facebook profile that I found using his phone number. He even listed his address and employer. Looked a bit like the artist Scooter, but with an even more messed up face and spiky hair full of gel. He lived somewhere outside of London, in an area I would describe as a British trailer park. Houses that were nice at some point, but the owners had spent $0 on maintenance since it was built. Trash everywhere, and broken windows that were boarded up, or fixed by sealing holes with garbage. Now to the fun part. According to his Facebook profile, Scooter worked at a hotel. This meant that he would have access to card information from guests that book through sites like Booking.com. I called the manager of the hotel and told him that there were reasons to believe that one of his employees were trying to commit credit card fraud and that the card numbers could belong to their guests. Gave him the names of the people who owned the cards Scooter tried to pay with, and to no surprise, both had stayed at the hotel. Told him it was Scooter, and the manager just exploded in anger. Not 100% sure what he said because he was screaming so loud, but I think Scooter wasn't a normal employee. He worked there through some kind of government training program or something. After talking to the manager, I called both Visa and MasterCard International and told them about Scooter's little business venture. Apparently, it's pretty easy to check if there are more cards that have been involved in fraud, where the cards have also been used at Hotel Scooter. With his Polish deposit account info, they would also be able to pin it to Scooter if he had been successful in scamming anyone, and sue him for the amount stolen. The police also called me later to get a statement regarding the whole situation, so I know the manager reported it to the police. Not sure what happened to Scooter, but according to his Facebook profile, he no longer works at the hotel, or anywhere else as far as I can see. Hey guys, I'm so bored at work, I'm just going to destroy this scammer's life. Well played, OP. Well played. Years ago, shortly after I graduated high school, I got a new job to support myself during college. The new gig was in a pet store, and I was working in the department that sold the fish, aquariums, reptiles, and birds, etc., etc. The store manager was an awesome guy who I'll call Kurt. Kurt was an old school guy. He went to work, worked hard, and went home. That's all he expected out of you as well. My immediate manager over my department was this large snaggletooth witch of a woman. I'll call her Stephanie. We got off to a bad start because she quickly found out that I knew more about reptiles than her. She preferred the fish, whereas I had kept snakes for the past 4 to 5 years. Her ego couldn't handle a fresh employee not needing her guidance. From then on, she was terrible to me. She singled me out to clean the goldfish tanks and had the other employees cover sales every day I worked. She would say rude things to me such as, "You're the weak link in my team. You're the reason I'm having problems in this department." Fast forward about a year. My hours had been cut by about 25%. I asked the store manager what the deal was, and he told me that our department had lost too much money between the lack of sales and broken merchandise, etc. This puzzled me, but I didn't think too much of it because everybody's hours were cut. Simultaneously, myself and a few coworkers had noticed something strange. Stephanie had recently taken much more interest in the customers. She insisted on helping certain customers and sending us to do busy work while they were there. A customer came in one evening and was talking to us about how nice Stephanie is. Turns out Stephanie was breeding mice and selling them to customers outside the store. We found out she was breeding all of her animals, her dogs, turtles, mice, and selling them to customers she met throughout our store. Not only was this taking business from us, our store had a couple corporate policies. We did not feed nor sell mice as live food for snakes. And we donated a lot of time and money to shelters, and we condemned breeding dogs and cats for sales. Stephanie was making money by selling animals to the customers, all while her department had hours cut for all of its employees. It didn't quite make sense how this was costing us so much money, until one evening I thought I had figured it out. Stephanie was an otherwise lazy woman, but when one of her customers came in, she was by their side the whole time. I watched closely as she followed a customer around, helping them pick out a cart full of expensive aquarium decorations and terrarium supplies like lights and bulbs. I followed and wrote down every item she grabbed. I wanted to see where this went. She directed the customer to a register and went to check them out. She's lazy and would never do this for any other customers. I noted the time and went back to work. I later spoke to other cashiers about Stephanie checking customers out, and they said that she only ever rang up certain customers, and she acted weird when they did it. They suspected she was abusing coupons for them or applying hefty discounts. I got my coworkers to corroborate my story about the under-the-table animal sales and suspicious behavior, and I went to talk to Kurt. I handed him a paper with about 20 UPCs and the time written on it, and I said, "I think if you look up our transaction from Register 2 at this time last night, you'll find a large discount applied to it. These are the items I would expect you to find on that transaction." He was a bit puzzled, and I explained everything to him. I told him I didn't want to make any accusations before because I wasn't sure. But after seeing her in action, I was pretty sure something was going on. He thanked me and assured me he would look into it. A couple weeks later, I was at work and I noticed Kurt was standing near the door watching closely. It just so happened Stephanie was coming in for a shift right about that time. The second she walked through the door, he called her over to his office. Apparently waiting in his office was a regional manager from corporate. He looked at the list I gave him and looked up transactions from the night before. He found one at the exact time I wrote, but it only had about half the items I listed. But every item that was on the receipt was on the list I gave him. This prompted him to watch her for a few weeks, and in that time frame, they found her to be taking her customers around shopping, personally taking them up to the register, and scanning every other item, and putting the expensive stuff into the cart without ringing it up. In that time span, she had given away over $1,500 in merchandise, and he looked back at the logs we keep for broken merchandise that is written off, and found an excessive amount of aquarium supplies and decorations that were signed off by her. It was something like 1,000% more written off broken merchandise than was found at the same time last quarter. All in all, she was charged with stealing and defrauding the store in over $3,500 in merchandise. And it just so happened that Kurt had already arranged for police to meet them after firing her to escort her out. I don't know if she went to jail, but I did get to watch her get walked out by police with about 20 employees staring. I wish I could have said something, but I had to settle for her making eye contact with me as she walked out, to which I gave her a quick wink. That's it for today, guys. Real quick, I really enjoy making these videos, and only you can help me continue to do it. A simple thumbs up and comment goes a long way and helps out big time. So with that being said, I'll see you tomorrow.